Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving deep into Azure Synapse Analytics Pipelines, and I'm going to show you exactly how to build automated data workflows in the cloud. Now, if you ever found yourself manually copying data from one place to another or running the same transformation over and over again, this video is going to change your life because of what we are going to learn today is how to automate all of that work. By the end of this video, you'll understand what pipelines are, how to build them from scratch, how to add complex transformation using Spark notebooks, and I'll give you plenty of real world examples and you can start using them immediately in your own project. So let's jump right in. These are the two learning objectives that we will be completing in this module. First starts with building a data pipeline in Azure Synapse Analytics, where you understand what is pipeline means, how to build one, and what are activities. The next includes how to use the notebook inside the pipeline and how to add parameterized cells and all about the notebooks. So let's jump into our objectives. Let's jump into understanding about the pipelines. First of all, what exactly pipeline means? Think of it like an assembly line in a factory. You know how in a factory a product moves through different stations. At one station, parts get assembled. At another station, it get painted. And in the final station, it get packed. Each station does one specific job and the product flows through all them automatically. A data pipeline works exactly the same way, except instead of physical products, we are moving data. Your data flows through different activities, each one doing specific thing, and at the end, you have a final processed data ready to use. Now, in the Azure Synapse Analytics, a pipeline are made up of three main building blocks. Let me explain you each one. The first building block is activities. Activities are like the workers in our factory. They are the ones actually doing the work. There are three types of activities you need to know about. First is the data movement activities. It is all about copying the data from one place to another. For example, you may need to copy sales data from your online store's database into Azure Data Lake storage. That's a data movement activity. You are just moving a data from point A to point B. Then we have the data transformation activities. These actually change your data in some way. Maybe you need to convert a CSV file into Parquet format, or maybe you need to aggregate sales data by region or join customer information with their history. All of that is data transformation. And finally, we have the control flow activity. These manage the logic and flow of your pipeline. Think if else conditions, loops, setting variables, handling errors. These are the activities that control how a pipeline actually runs. A second building block is linked services. Now, linked services are basically connection information. They are like a keys that unlock access to different resources. Let's say your pipeline needs to read from a SQL database. You need a linked services that contain the connection string, the credentials, and all the information to connect to that database. Or maybe you need to access an Azure Blob Storage account. You'd create a linked services for that too. Linked services gives your pipeline access to all external data so and processing platforms it needs. The third building block is datasets. A dataset defines how your data actually looks like. It tells the pipeline where the data is stored, what format it is in, like whether it's CSV or Parquet, and what structure it is, like the column names and the data types. So when you're building a pipeline, you define the datasets for both your source data and also for your destination data. Let me give you a real world example of how it tie all this together. Imagine you run an e-commerce company and every single night at midnight you need to do three activities. First, you need to copy all the customer orders from your online store database. Second, you need to transform that data to calculate things like total daily sales, average order value, top selling products. And third, you need to load all that processed data into a data warehouse so your business analyst can create reports in the morning. Without a pipeline, you would have to do all this manually every single night, but with a pipeline, you build it once and it runs automatically. Every night at midnight, the pipeline kicks off, copies the data, transform it, and load it into the hardware. And you don't have to lift a finger. That's the power of pipeline. All right. So now that you understand what pipelines are, let me walk you through how to actually build one in Azure Synapse Studios. I'm going to give you a exact step-by-step process. Step 1 is to open the Azure Synapse Studios and navigate to the Integrate Hub. When you look at the top left of the screen, you will see different icons. The Integrate Hub has an icon that looks like a pipeline. Click on that. Then you will see a plus sign at the top. Click that plus sign and select pipeline. This creates a brand new empty pipeline for you. Now you have got a blank canvas, and this is where you're going to build your workflow. On the left side, you'll see a list of all the different activities you can use. This is like a toolbox. Let's build a simple example together. Let's say we want to have a copy sales data from a database and then transfer it to any of the databases. Here is how we do it. First, we need to find a copy data activity in our toolbox. It's usually under the move and the transform category. Drag that copy data activity into your canvas. Now you need to configure it. Click on the activity and you'll see the tabs that are at the bottom. Go to that source tab. This is where you tell it where the data is coming from. Click on the new to create a new data set. You'll choose what type of a data source it is, like a SQL database, and then you select or create a linked services with your connection information. Give your dataset a name, maybe something like a source sales data. Next part is to have a sync tab. Sync is just a fancy word for the destination. This is where your data is going to. Again, create a new dataset. Maybe this time you're copying to Azure Data Store from and set up your linked services for that and name your dataset something like raw sales data. Now you have got your first copy activity configured, but we also want to transfer the data, right? So let's add a data flow activity. Drag a data flow activity onto the canvas below your copy data activity. Here is the important part. You need to connect these activities so they run in order. You'll notice each activity has these little colored boxes on the edges. There are green, red, and blue boxes. Green boxes means successful and the red box means fail. A blue box means completed regardless of success or failure. But what's something goes wrong? What if the copy data activity fails? You should handle that too. Here is what I recommend. Add a log error activity or a send email activity. Connect the red fail boxes from your copy data activity to this error handling activity. Now, if the copy fails, the pipeline will automatically log the error or send you an email notification. Your pipeline might look something like a copy data activity, arrow points to the data flow activity that succeeds the arrow points to be sent to a successful mail activity. But if the copy data fails, the arrow points to a log error activity. If the data flow fails, the arrow points to another log flow activity. One more important thing, you're building and testing your pipeline. You don't want to run it in the production. Azure Synapse has a debug button at the top. Click that debug button and your pipeline will run immediately so you can test it. You can see exactly what happens at each step, whether it's successful or failure, how long it takes, etc. Debug mode is your best friend when you're developing pipelines. And the next topic is about the data flows. This is very important because this is where a lot of transformation magic happens. A data flow is a visual, no code way to transform your data. You don't need to write SQL or Python. You just drag and drop transformation steps and connect them together. Every data flow has three main components. First, source. Second is the transformation. And third is the sink. A source is where your data comes from. Maybe it can be a CSV file sitting in Azure Data Lake. Maybe it's a table in the SQL database. Maybe it's JSON file from an API. Whatever it is, That's your source. You can have multiple sources in a single data flow if you need to combine datas from different places. Transformations are those operations you perform on your data as it flows through. These are tons of transformations available. Let me give you some common ones. Filter transformation let you remove rows you don't want. Aggregate transformation lets you group and summarize data. Joint transformation combines the data from multiple sources. Derived column transformation create new calculated fields. We can select whatever transformation we want and we can do whatever changes we need to perform. And the final component, which is sync. A sync is where you transform data's goes. Maybe you're loading it into a Azure SQL database table. Maybe you're trying to write it back to a data lake as a Parquet file. The final destination is your sync. So you can do whatever operations you want, and with the help of these data flows, you can perform the transformations accordingly. And the next topic that we are going to cover is about running a pipelines and monitoring the pipelines. So now we have understood how to build a pipeline. Here is how we need to know how actually it runs. There are three main ways. The first way is debug mode, which we talked about earlier. This is for testing during development. You click the debug button, the pipeline runs immediately, and you can see what happens. The thing about debug mode is it doesn't save your pipeline's history. It's just for testing. And the second way is a manual trigger. Once your pipeline is ready for production, you can go to add trigger at the top and select trigger now. This runs the pipeline immediately and it doesn't save to your history. This is perfect for one-time data loads and when you need to run something on demand. The third way, and this is the most powerful, which is scheduled triggers. This is how you automate your pipelines and to run a scheduled task. Click add trigger and select new trigger. You can set it up and run every day at 2 a.m. or every Monday at 9 a.m. or even every hour. However you schedule, you can do it accordingly. Once you set up a scheduled trigger, your pipeline will run automatically at those times. You don't have to do anything. This is a true automation. There is actually a fourth way too, which is an event-based trigger. These trigger happens when some specific changes happen. For example, you can set up a trigger that runs whenever a new file is uploaded to your storage account or whenever a specific database table get uploaded. This is a great for real-time data processing. And you can run this pipeline with the help of these methods. Next topic comes with how to integrate Spark inside the notebook. So this is a really a powerful way to integrate Spark inside the notebook, which is really great, but also offers some more flexibility. Maybe you need to apply a machine learning model to your data. Maybe you need to use a specific Python library. Maybe you need to have some really complex custom logic that just doesn't fit into your visual data flow interface. That's when you use your Spark notebooks. A Spark notebook is basically a place where you can write code in Python or Scala that runs on Apache Spark. If you have ever used Jupyter Notebook, it's something a same concept. You have cells where you write code and you can run those cells to process the data at a massive scale. So this is a glimpse of what Azure Synapse is about and how you can integrate notebooks inside the pipeline. So you can use it in our real world uh, examples also. And there is also an important factor that we need to discuss about, which is nothing but the parameterized cell. It is nothing but where you set a folder path to a default value. So you can override that value right in the pipeline. Maybe your pipeline has a parameterized cell for a current date and you want to process that data from a specific date folder. You can pass a dynamic value inside your notebook. So you might set the folder path equals slash data slash sales slash and then concatenate today's date. You can also configure things like timeout, which is how long the notebook is allowed to run before it fails, and retry counts, which is how many times it should retry if it fails. A real world example can include how you would use this is like a daily sales processing workflow where every morning you need to process yesterday's sales data. Your pipeline might look like this. First activity would have a copy data. On the second, we will have a notebook activity called clean data, which reads the raw data, removes the duplicate records, and fixes the data quality issues and standardizes the format. And the third activity, which is also another notebook activity called calculate metrics, it calculates complex calculations and using the statistical functions, it predicts the future sales trends. And the fourth activity is the data flow activity, where it loads the data to the warehouse. And by connecting all these successfully, we have got a complete end-to-end workflow. The copy data activity feeds into a clean data notebook, which feeds into a calculate metric notebook, which feeds into the data flow, which loads everything into a warehouse. So this is how we integrate our notebook inside the pipeline. So this is all about our topic. I would like to give you guys a best practices and tips to follow. The first tip is on start simple. When you're building a new pipeline, you don't need to worry to build an entire thing all at once. Build one activity, test it with debug mode, make sure it works, and then add the next activity. Build incrementally. So a lot of people try to build these massive complex pipeline at once, which won't work. And the second tip is to use parameters to make your pipeline reusable. Don't hard code things like dates or folder paths or file names. Instead, make them parameters so they can change it whenever it is needed. And the third tip, always handle errors gracefully. Connect those red flagged paths to an error handling activity. Log the errors to a table so you have a record. Send email notifications if you need it. The worst thing is having a pipeline fail silently in the middle of the night and you don't find out until the next day when people are asking where their reports are. And the fourth tip is to monitor the performance. Once your pipelines are running in a production, keep an eye on how long activities are taking. If a data flow that used to take 5 minutes is now taking 30 minutes, something is wrong. Maybe your data volume increased and you need to scale up your Spark pool. Maybe there is an insufficient transformation you need to optimize. Maybe use of monitoring hub to track this stuff would help you keep up the performance. So this is all about the tips. The conclusion is about we have learned a lot of stuff. Azure Synapse Analytic Pipelines are, and why it's so useful for automation, how you build a pipeline using activities, linked services, and the data sets and all stuff. And the key takeaways, this will let you automate a repetitive data tasks. Build it once, let it run automatically, and free yourself up to work on more important stuff. So if you want get a hands-on practice, the Microsoft has some excellent labs, so you can see to them. And if you found this video helpful, please hit the like button if you really help the channel out, and subscribe it if you want to see more Azure and data engineering content. I've got tons of more tutorials. Drop a comment below if you have any questions or if there is a specific Azure topic you would like me to cover next. I read every single comment and love to hear from you all. Alright, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching this video and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.